Hey, so if you want to know how your property taxes are calculated and you live in Washoe County, you're going to want to watch this podcast. Once again, my name is Ken Angst, team leader of the Angst Real Estate team. We are the South Reno Real Estate team, so if you have any questions about your real estate needs, look us up on our website, Living in South Reno. Sign up for our podcasts just like this one or our weekly emails. So today we have a special guest, the new elected Chris Sarman.
Correct, yeah.
And he's coming in. He was just, you were just introduced as the new assessor when?
Well, so yeah, November 18th, they certified the vote.
Yep.
So I'm actually, the current title, Ken, is Assessor Elect. But as of January 1st, I will
Okay,
be
so it doesn't take place until
January.
Okay,
yeah.
great. Well,
So,
congratulations.
thank you very much.
He's been on the show before. One of our favorite guests because he kind of brings reason and some insight on how things work at Washoe County, the assessor. So.
Yep.
So we're going to
So
talk about. Well, I just did a podcast that was very insightful. A couple thousand views.
Oh wow.
Lots of questions. So I actually have questions from people who put questions at the end. But specifically, what we're going to talk about today is we got this 2023-2024 assessment notice in the mail,
Okay.
and people get it.
Mm-hmm.
It's mixed in with some Christmas cards, and people may toss it out. And there's lots of questions on it. So I have an example one that we have here, and I'd kind of like to go through it and just kind of question you on how things work and how is it calculated. So
Cool. First, real quick though, thank you for providing this information through the means that you do, because you're absolutely right. There's always a lot of questions.
and this helps,
with,
yeah.
With property valuation
Mm-hmm.
And taxes, which we don't do, but ultimately valuation does result in the taxes. The phone calls ring. And just in the community. So what you're doing is a great thing. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so you can hopefully use this to answer questions. If not,
Yeah.
obviously what I find is the assessor is one of the more helpful organizations in Washoe County, and they're really nice. You call in, and what I find, and I'm going to kind of toot your horn right now, is the Washoe County Assessor website is one of the best in the entire country, hands down.
I appreciate that. We take a lot of pride in that for sure.
Yeah, and it's full of information, a lot more than you even know. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many fields. You can look up floodplains, your taxes, when it was sold. A lot of that information, believe it or not, people don't know around the country is not accessible. It's not even private. It's all private information. So
Isn't that crazy?
yeah, and that helps with how you figure out how to put an offer on the house. So
Yeah.
it's all good information. So let's kick it off. Talk about this assessment notice. So when do they come out?
Okay, so we do reappraisal. That starts July 1st. That typically runs through November, at which time we're starting to wrap up what we've done and the changes, which might be improvements, new valuation. Ultimately, we do some quality control, and then in early December, we start sending out these notices to let the property tax owner know what those changes might look like from last year to this year regarding any new construction, new improvements, but more than likely your overall value, and that includes the value to the land and the value to the improvements, which is an overall taxable value. And so we are mandated by statute to actually send those out by December 18th. So hopefully everybody has received theirs. In addition to the valuation notice, we also do a legal notice in the paper, which directs the taxpayer to our website or to our office and informing them that these have been published. So
Okay, so they're out there. So if you don't have yours, what do they do? Call the assessor and
yeah, or even just jump online to that website that you talked about, and that new value is going to be there.
Okay, it's online. It's all public record.
Online. Yep.
So keep in mind, people are secretive about this. It's all public record. It's one of the benefits and one of the downfalls is people know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
In real estate, I like it just because you kind of know the evaluation of homes, and it helps you, buyers figure out what they should be offering homes.
Yeah, we'd be in a lot of trouble if we were a state like Texas, where it's a non-disclosure state,
Yep.
and you had to go in and you don't have to disclose your sales price of your home. You, as an agent, would be in trouble trying to determine what the value of the home is.
So,
and our job would be really hard. So I know that it's almost like a system down there that's designed to fight a little bit. So ultimately, to what you're getting at, what I'll discuss going forward here too, is that these values are backed up by values that we can see.
quick question about that. How many homes are you evaluating?
We have 188,000 parcels in this county that we're charged to maintain and establish values, fair and equitable values upon, and then of course prepare and maintain those property records that you can look at online as well.
So you have 6 months to figure out the assess. So how many people are working on it?
So we have 20 appraisers in our office. Those 20 appraisers, has a portfolio of a certain area of our region. Sometimes it's 10, 15,000 parcels. It's a lot of work that's being done. Very proud of our staff here and the ability to do that. And so we do mass appraisal, right? So in order to get that done, we're not looking at each house individually,
Right,
we can't do that.
yeah.
So we have to look at a neighborhood,
Okay.
and then try to dive into specifics with properties as we move. But it's a mass appraisal system.
Got it. It's a big job. So let's talk about, on your assessment,
Yeah.
it talks about your prior assessment,
Yes.
and then it goes through building, personal property, taxable value, and then total assess. So let's talk about taxable value. So taxable value is the amount that you're ultimately going to be assessed at 35%. We'll talk about that in a second. But let's talk about a lot of questions are, what are building improvements, or what are the buildings? What does that include? Does that include a barn, landscape? What is included in that?
It includes that. But yeah, the taxable value, let's break that down first real quick, if you don't mind. The taxable value, a lot of people have a misconception that taxable value is a market value. It is not. The state of Nevada, we are a modified cost approach to value. It's complex, but it also means that you, as a property owner, myself included, we're not paying at a market value. If you're in California, you buy a house, that's what you're going to pay taxes on, is that purchase price. That's not how we operate in Nevada. So you're going to see, if you're looking at your valuation notice here, and you think, well, what's the value of my home? And you look at what the actual taxable value is, it's oftentimes going to be much less. And so that taxable value, again, is a modified cost approach to value.
Yep.
So we look at establishing land at market.
Okay.
There's several ways to do that. Sometimes there's vacant sales that are available. Sometimes we have to run an allocation method. But ultimately, we're going to establish market to the land on a mass approach basis again.
Okay.
And then we add to it this improvement value that you speak of. So the improvement value is going to be your house. It may just be yard improvements, it may be a detached garage, it may be the barn that you speak of, and that sort of thing. So anything that's affixed to the land essentially is what we're looking at as a
All right, so
improvement value.
you have land.
Yes.
So that's actually what land parcels are kind of going for, correct? That's it. More or less.
Yeah, more or less, correct.
Yeah, and then, so I mean, if you look at the building improvements, people are going to take their house, and then they're going to take this. I think the median price per square foot in Washoe County is $300,000. So that's not going to be here, right? Because
Correct.
But so how is that number, the building improvements?
Okay.
That's replacement value, or what is that?
Yeah, so the improvement value, and that's a great question, and that's exactly what that is a cost approach to that value, right? So what would it cost today to replace those improvements? Okay. We use a Marshall and Swift cost estimating system to get those building costs.
Okay.
Those costs are, of course, in statute we have to use those, but think about the time frame in which we get delivered those costs, right? They've got to do their research to get the costs, publish the costs, we get the costs, and so there's a gap in that time, right? As we know, construction materials are through the roof, concrete, lumber, all those things, iron, is through the roof.
Yep.
And so a lot of people are probably looking at this improvement and saying, well, why did it go up so much? And that's the reason why. But ultimately, we arrive at a replacement cost new, based on those costs. And then we back out for the depreciation of those costs.
And that's what surprises me. It's not, depreciation is not shown here.
It's
right?
not, but it's built into that, right?
Okay.
So depreciation is statute in Nevada as well. That's 1.5% per year per the age of those improvements. So if you have a home that's 50 years old, you're going to see 75% depreciation taken out of those improvements.
And it is max out 50 then?
And max out at 50.
All right, so this is, I mean, we're going to have to cut the interview here, but
Right.
that's why we see houses in the old Southwest that are 90 years old or whatever, 100 years old, that may be worth 5 million. Their property taxes are 500. That's extreme, but
Yeah, that's
it's not extreme actually, because
100%. So sub-market wise, you're going to see those older homes. I live in an older home, and definitely endure that benefit of those lower taxes because of the lower taxable value that's designed to that. There's been a lot of people that look at that as a benefit, and there's a lot of people that look at that and want to challenge the way our system works today because of it. I also live in an older home, and so know that I also spend a lot more money at Home Depot, right, fixing up the improvements.
So when you're paying $500 in taxes and your house is 100 years old, you're probably spending more money to replace the boiler, the AC, or even put an AC in, or new windows, new roof.
Right. Yeah.
So I guess that's how we've explained it last time that you were in here. You pay less in taxes, but you got to make a lot more improvements.
Yeah.
And you get that benefit for the depreciation, and you should be essentially spending that money to keep your house up to a current standard, correct?
Yeah.
And some people don't, but
yeah, but it's a great point that you bring up because we get the question all the time: my house versus my neighbor's house, or I have a house here that's in this older neighborhood and a house in this newer neighborhood, and that's a really hard thing for people to understand, especially given that they're both multi-million-dollar homes, right? $1 million home. This one's paying $5,000 or $8,000 in taxes. This one's paying $2,000. So a big difference there, but it really comes down to the depreciation that is mandated in our statutes at 1.5% per year. So
that's good. 1.5%. Keep that in mind. So if you're dealing with a 10-year-old house, you get 15% off.
Correct.
The buildings, improvements, etc. Okay, and that's not shown here.
No,
but that's interesting. And the other big takeaway that you just hit is that we're different from California, because in California, when you sell your house, I think it's 1.25%, and we'll have to look it up, or whatever it is. So if you buy a $1 million house, your taxes are 1.25%, whatever percentage it is now. So it's $12,500, and that's the price that you're going to pay tax on. And here it does not reset, right?
We do not reset upon the sale of a property. It is all based on the modified cost approach to value.
So we have a different system here. So people from California get confused because they come in and say, well, how much property tax am I going to do?
Yeah.
So now what's personal property? Because obviously on this example, personal property is 0.
Yeah, and so personal property is anybody that has that business, right? Or airplanes or mobile homes, that sort of a thing. So you don't live in a mobile home or whoever's assessment this is, but you're going to see mobile homes on that sort of a thing. So.
Okay, so that's where they catch you on, not catch you, but that they assess the.
Yeah, that's where they look at the mobile homes.
Okay,
there.
and then so you add all those up, raw land, which is kind of like market value. This is replacement value based on. This is interesting. Personal property, and then that's how you come to the total taxable.
Yeah, the total taxable value is that land plus the improvements.
So in this case, it's almost 600. Now the question I get is, what the heck? The total assessed value? Why is it? This says 200,000 versus 600,000. Why is it a third or 2/3 less? What is this?
Yeah. So that the assessed value is ultimately what your tax rate's going to be applied to. But the assessed rate is 35% in Nevada. So. I spoke to the complexity, and we're just going a little. This is one more step into that, but we have another step to go. But ultimately, we arrive at a taxable value as an appraiser estimates the value. We arrive at a taxable value. Then we apply a 35% rate to that to ultimately end up at an assessed value. The assessed value is where you're going to take your tax rate for your tax district. That's also on here. We should actually have the tax rates. That would be smart. And then you could ultimately arrive at what projected taxes would be.
Okay.
But again, we don't do the taxes. We're just doing the
so that's the confusion is that don't call Yolan that he just tells you what the value of your home is.
Yep.
Then I'm guessing that there's a tax division.
The treasurer.
The treasurer, Washoe County treasurer, are the ones that
prepare the bills and the tax bills.
And that's what you get in when, like June?
Well, so the tax bills. So these values, I think that's an important note to make, that these are values, right? The 23, 24 taxable values, that the taxes that are going to be tied to this are actually going to be next August. Okay.
Right. That's when
so taxes that you're currently are paying now, which is August, October, January, March, those are
already
being based on values that we established last year.
Right. So these are for next year. and the following year.
Yep.
And just keep in mind that the city Washoe County operates from June to June is there. June 30th to June 30th, I think, is their
June 30th, July 1. Yep.
July, is their fiscal year. So that's why it's kind of broken up. It gets confusing.
Yep, it really does. I mean, and this is one step in our process, because this defines that our roll has been closed, our secured property roll. That again, here's our new values. Here's the change that have taken place. Now we can reopen that roll because we want to look at what exists as of June 30th, 2023. So a lot of times you have houses that are being built right now. It might be just vacant land, but by June 30th, that house is on the roll, so then we call it a reopen notice, which is very similar to this. It's just called a reopen.
So that brings me an important, because people are looking at this. In this example, last year, the total assessed value on this property was, I'm just going to call it 165 up to 210, essentially. And people are asking, well, what the heck? We're in a down market, but what you're telling me, based on our conversation, is someone comes up with those numbers earlier this year about building costs.
Yeah.
And then, so we're almost like a year behind.
Year and a half, almost 2, yeah.
So people are like, well, it shouldn't go up this way because we're in a down market. So we'll see. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I'm just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
If our housing market has slowed, it's down to about 10%, Washoe County, approximately from the highs. We're going to see that in our assessed value 2 years from now, because the person who calculates, is that essentially...
Okay, so it
maybe not that easy.
It's easy when you work here, right, to understand it. What you just defined was market value. Okay, so if we were a market value system, which we are not, we would have been at market last year, and then this year we would be down 10%.
But we're in the, what is it called?
We're in the modified cost approach,
which
to
is
value.
Runs, like it or not, 12 to 15 months behind, it looks like.
Our taxable values by law cannot exceed market value, and then typically you're going to see our values that may be 30% of market value, 50% of market value. Newer house, it might be 90% of market value, right? Nice. So, because our cost should be updated. But to your point, why did these values go up? And countywide, approximately 20%. Okay, a lot of people saw 16, a 20%. Between 16 25%, and it may be even higher, maybe even a little bit lower. But ultimately, in addition to the improvements that you just talked about, those costs were through the roof. That's why we saw that big increase in the improvement costs. Okay, we also saw increases to the land though, and that's because when we start our appraisal July 1, correct?
Right.
So we are using sales, and we can't use sales. We got to use sales.
So it's looking in arrears.
June 30th and before,
which is 6 months ago. It's a different market completely.
Yeah. So now to bring up to what you just brought up, going forward into next year, if we do continue to see a downward trend in the market, and we're going to probably see a decrease in the land values going forward, because that is a mass. That's market value on a mass basis. Going forward, we'll probably see a drop to the land, but I would suspect that we might still see an increase in the improvements because of that
inflation.
Time.
Is it because of inflation too? Yeah, because we're having huge inflation. So next year you can still another bump before.
Yeah.
But when inflation comes down and the market comes down, if it does, then we could see. Because one of the questions is, do you have any idea why the building improvement evaluation has increased 20%?
Yeah, see, 20%. There you go, right there.
And he just said, this is from Mike C. I said I'd get you on here, Mike. So there you go. I mean, that's why we're doing this.
Yeah. So if I could just point out one thing, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
Because this is what, everybody gets this valuation notice, and they automatically think, oh my gosh, my value went up 20%. My taxes are going to be going up 20%. Not true, right? Because luckily in the state of Nevada, AB 49 was passed in 2005, I believe.
That's right.
Which is a tax cap. Okay, and so the tax cap is a cap on your taxes, and we can ultimately back into a tax cap value if we wanted to, which would be really great to see on here, right? Because that would probably alleviate a lot of questions.
I think so. Maybe that's.
But the tax cap, if it's your primary residence, it's going to go up 3%. So your value may go up 20, 50. It could go up 100%, but your taxes are only going to go up 3%.
3% from the previous year.
From the previous.
So maybe it'd be a good idea to put the taxes on here. I'm just.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, you probably have to go through some process to the state to get these forms changed. I'm sure but yeah, that would be nice to have the property tax. So if you're in primary residence, we can talk about rentals in a second. That's a whole other animal. Your taxes are only going to go up 3%, regardless of what the assessed value.
Right. Yeah. So this is our here's what our value is,
This is
and,
good.
and it has nothing to do with the taxes, but everybody thinks that it does, and it kind of does, right? But it's the tax cap that's such an important factor to what people are actually going to pay in taxes. So
Good.
you could jump on the website, and I don't know if you can see it from the outside. You might be able to. I know internally you can on our site, but there's actually a tax cap value, and somebody bought a house for $1 million. Our taxable value is $600,000, and the tax cap value may be $300,000. And so
I'd like to see that. Maybe
yeah.
I can get that. That'd be great. Oh, it might be on your site. And then there's this form that they've done. It's on their website. I'll put the link below in this podcast. But understanding your value notice. So I think this is key because it kind of goes through just like we talked about.
Yeah.
Which we like.
It's color coded.
It's colored. I didn't print color.
Yeah.
But take a look at this. And it answers a lot of questions. But I want a few more questions about this that I think are important. Is what is the tax district? Is that just this one's in the 4,000? So is there a tax district based on location?
Yeah, it's a locational tax.
Do you know how many there are?
Off the top of my head, no.
Several hundred or thousand, probably.
Yeah, you can. There's lots of them.
Because I'm guessing you break up neighborhoods,
Yeah,
like subdivisions.
And to be honest, most of the tax rates associated with these tax districts are about 3.6%, 3.66%.
Okay.
So I'll just throw that out there. It's not going to be any higher than 3.66. It'll be lower if you, depending on where you live at and some of the services that are provided, that sort of thing. But it's typically 3.66%.
Okay, and then in this one, I got this question if you look below, it says new added to assessment rolls for this parcel.
Mm-hmm.
Right. What could possibly be $112?
I
don't know. I'm not trying to put you on the site, but what could that potentially be from?
Yeah. So that's an interesting one. Let me start with the major stuff, and then we'll kind of go down into like this, right? But if you have a new house, new improvement to the roll, right? So obviously we have a new house, we do it. Oftentimes a lot of people didn't do anything to their home, and they still might see a new value added to the roll. And then what that means is because our office is charged with the discovery, listing, and valuation processes of all property that's subject to taxation in Nevada. Within that, I just said discovery, right? So we may get outside of getting a permit, which is somebody gets a permit, they know they're doing something.
And this number would go up. Let's say I did a permit that's where permits increase the value.
Yeah, you're going to see a permit value on there, but it's not always just necessarily a permit. We also, as we are driving by, as we have aerial imagery that exists now, we try to do 20% of the county every year where we do an aerial review or a drive-by. So we're actually mandated to do that in statute as well. That a property must be physically looked at, essentially, right? Or we count that as aerial review as well, but once every 5 years. So that's 20% of the county that we are trying to look at. And so we may all of a sudden go through a neighborhood, look and see that a porch roof has been added, right? Yeah.
Okay.
So you'll see some changes to that, and sometimes those changes you are aware of, and sometimes you say, "Oh, I didn't do anything." Well, there's an improvement to that property that existed that didn't before. Right?
So does this get added to this number then?
Yeah, it's already in there, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So they said 112 on this one.
Yep.
Now, one of the most important things, and we kind of chatted about this, it's a very complex thing and we're trying to figure out why, but you need to make sure if you're looking at this form, and if this is your primary, current tax cap status as 11/29/22. And if this is your primary residence, you need to make sure that this is the low cap primary residence.
100%. 100%.
Because if you go on the assessor, it's your responsibility. They send you a form if you don't look at it, and it's a very nondescript. It comes in the mail. People get a lot of mail.
Right.
Could toss it, but you need to fill it out if you get this and send it back in. If you don't, you're put into the high cap. And it sounded like that you guys sent out several notices.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's up to the individual to make sure that they're in the right cap.
Yeah, we can't hold everybody's hand in the county, right?
There's 188,000.
180,000 parcels, but if we look at outside of the income producing type properties, the rentals, so to speak, where there's an income analysis to that too, which could get you into a low cap. But let's just talk to the audience here on the primary residence side of things that you're talking about. If you were to buy a house anytime between July 1 and April sometime in April is when we send those letters out. You're going to get that letter that says, hey, is this your primary residence? If it is, you need, please let us know. If we don't get anything that's been returned, then we send out a second letter in August, or if we have property that's sold between that April date and July 1st, you're going to get that letter again. So as I've had a discussion with you on this before, it'd be really nice if we could get that form into the escrow process where they just automatically sign it. But ultimately, yes, if it's your primary residence,
You're responsible.
Fill out the form. If you haven't filled out the form and for some reason it's 8%, this is your opportunity to review that, right? Let us know. You can call our office. You can submit that form at any time within that year. So
yeah, so it's online. But my understanding is if you don't, and you've been in the high cap,
we don't know, right? So it doesn't
you can't claw that back, right?
Well, you can. You can get. Let's say somebody bought a house in August, right? And all of a sudden. It's May, you still have time to get that changed to that 3%.
Okay,
so
that's a big deal because if you sit there and don't do anything, and you've been your tax is essentially going up by 4 or 5% higher for a long period of time, which makes a difference. And so that's why another reason why you'll see rentals have higher cap or have higher taxes, right?
That's a great point. You're an educated individual, Ken, because not a lot of people look at that, but you're 100% right. The values might be the same. So let's just say that there was a house that was a rental for 5 years or 10 years even,
20.
right? And so all of a sudden that house gets sold and now it's a primary residence. Well, taxable values are going to be maybe similar. If we're just saying house like for like, right? Both houses are the same house, but one's been a rental. Well, that rentals had that high cap on it, and so the taxes are going to be higher
by 5% or
through
whatever.
10. Yeah, this year the high cap is 8%.
8%. So that's a 3 spread. And if I want to talk about this. I know you're limited on time, but this is good stuff. This is fascinating stuff. So yeah, so like you're saying, if that rental was for a rental, let's say the house is a primary residence versus the rental, and then they sell at the same time 10 years later. The property tax could be up to 50% higher. Correct?
It could be.
And you can't reset that, right?
You don't go back to reset that, right? But like for like homes, one was a rental, one was primary. You have a stark difference in taxes.
Yeah, so keep that in mind, and that's actually
as a real estate agent too, because I know when you guys list those properties,
people don't know.
Don't just jump into a house that is the same one and say, well, their taxes. Make sure that you're looking at our website or the treasurer's website to see what those actual taxes are.
So several ways you can check is very critical. Check on here. You get a tax notice too that says what cap you're in, or just go on the Washoe County Assessor and humor yourself and type your address in. And then there's I've talked about this, and I'll put how to do this below. We have or above. Just type it in and find out. Make sure you're not paying 5%, because if you let this go, you don't get it back.
You don't get it back, no.
So, great discussion. A few other questions from my trustee. Let's talk about if I don't want to spend an hour on this. We could easily spend an hour on this discussion on rentals, because we own rentals and we see it. So if it's your primary residence, 3% increase. So people are getting this for their rentals, correct?
Your property owner.
If you're a property owner, you're getting this. So then you're going to see here, if you're a rental, and it's going to say high cap. Why is it in the high cap for rentals?
Well, okay.
And I know that's a tough discussion because it's based on what? Rents, right?
Yeah, it's rents, but it's also anything that is not a primary residence. So that's going to include vacant land, multifamily, commercial, industrial, anything that's not your primary residence, whereby somebody, that statute, that tax cap was put in place so that people wouldn't be taxed out of their homes, right?
Benefit to
that primary residence, especially people that are on fixed incomes, right? And so that's primarily why that was put in place, and that was put in place during the time when we had our first boom, and so values were going through the roof, and legislators thought, well, hey, here's a good way to protect homeowners from being taxed out of their homes. It's also a really good way for local government to budget, right? Okay, we can expect a 3%, and, and more than that, really, because of the high cap. But the high cap is at 8% now. So that's just what the legislation is. That's why it's at 8%. So and that's today. I mean, you keep saying 5%, and that's a good reference point, because the last 10 years the high cap's been at 4
Okay,
Low fives.
but it goes up as values go up, right?
It's a
Sliding.
percentage of CPI. So
Okay.
when you talk about the inflation and all that stuff, so
Because
now
the
you're
county has more expenses, so they got to
Yeah.
increase your.
Yep.
But it's stuck at 3%. Now, if you own a rental, this is really important. It's based on the federal government's HUD rates for rents in our area. So they give out rates based on what the federal government. So the rent should be.
Yeah, so you could ultimately have a rental that is 3%, but that's because you are getting rents that are lower
Than the market value.
than those guidelines. Lower than the market value is a better way to put it. And you're providing basically a home to somebody at a lower rent, at a lower than market value. So there's guidelines to that. So if you are getting low rents, also look at that and
That's a
see
good
if you
point.
might qualify for a 3%.
Because that form comes out, and that form comes out for rentals every single year, and you're supposed to fill out what your rents are going forward. And if you don't fill it out, high cap. That's how it works.
How else do we know, right?
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of people just throw those away, but you should look at your market rents, because what happens as an investor is you have someone in your house for 10 years, the same tenant.
Yeah.
You're not keeping up with the market rents, and if you don't go in there and look, because there's a condo, 1 bedroom, 2, 3, and it goes all the way up, and it gives you ranges. And if you're below that, you can fill out the rent and get. We had several of ours go into the low cap this year.
Okay.
For the first
Wow.
time.
Wow. Yeah, it is broken down, as you said, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, 4 bedroom. So and who pays the utilities and who
Yes.
So there's those components to it as well. But
So take a look at that, particularly if you're an investor, because you can lower your taxes.
Mhm.
Because if you don't, 10 years, 20 years from now, your property taxes on that property are going to make it so that it's a little less desirable for someone who were to buy that as their primary residence.
or increase your rent, right?
That increase your rent. But when you have good tenants,
Yeah, I know.
it's tough.
That's good.
All right, so the next question I get a lot from our people is, someone's disabled, someone is a veteran, someone older. Are there types of assistance?
Yeah, there's
Available.
exemptions that exist, right?
So how do they find that
and
out?
You just
Okay.
identified most of them.
Okay.
You just identified most
So
of
if
them.
you want to call 775-328-2277, if you fall in one of those,
Talk to our assessment and services team and
take a look at it, because it's not huge, but especially now how the economy is,
Mm-hmm.
take
Every
advantage
little bit
of
helps,
those
right? Yeah.
if you're in a spot that you can need some help. So take a look at that. What else do I have in here? We covered a lot here. What happens if they don't agree? So they get this. I'm
Okay,
guessing-
good. I was, if you weren't going to bring it up, I was going to bring it up.
So I get a lot of people, especially on my last podcast. I mean, I have questions here. We're going to go over in a second. I don't agree. Why is it up? We've kind of talked about why it is, because we're kind of a lagging indicator and inflation. Why is my building improvement so high? Or why is this?
Yeah.
If you don't agree, or like he's saying, Chris is saying, hey, we do mass evaluations.
Mm-hmm.
Something could be off.
100%. Yep.
So it's important to review
This is your opportunity to call us if you disagree with the value. It allows us to go look at that property as an individual property amongst the mass, right? But ultimately, this is your opportunity to look at the value. What we don't want to do is exceed taxable value, right? Because that's the law that we have to abide by, that our taxable value cannot exceed market value. And I might have just said that incorrectly, but our taxable value cannot exceed market value. So if you disagree, we by all means, we have a staff here that is courteous. And that's the mission going forward, is to remain courteous. But call us. We are happy to walk through any other questions you have, and show you how we got to this evaluation, right? So how we got to your land value. Again, the improvement value is just a cost system, so that's a little tougher of a discussion to have. But ultimately, what's the overall value? And if you disagree with it, do you have information to provide to us? Because that's the other part of it, right?
You don't have all that information.
If you have information that we don't have, that's what we want to know about. If you have sales that show that we exceed the market value, that's what we want to know about. Okay, so if we still don't come to some sort of resolution at that point in time, you can absolutely appeal the value to the state board or the County Board of Equalization first, and if you don't approve with that decision, then you can absolutely appeal to the State Board of Equalization. So we don't typically end up there because we do have such a great staff here, and sometimes it just takes the discussion like we're having right now to fully understand it.
This is great.
And the tax cap is really what saves us, to be honest. But and right now the market's been so strong for the last 5 years that our values aren't really close to market value.
No, they're not. I mean, in this case, this taxable value, I can tell you from this example, not telling you what, it's about half.
Yeah, it's about half. So, between the costs that are already low and the lag in that, and then the land value and the mass approach, our taxable values don't often reach market value. But they have, and certainly during the recessions and downtime, hopefully we won't be in that right now. Things seem fairly stable, which is great. But just keep that in mind going forward. So, if you do appeal to the County Board of Equalization, they're going to ask you the same thing. You're going to have to present evidence that shows them why a reduction is needed, not just because we're mean, right?
But we've had several people who discovered high cap. We found issues because we check all of our clients before.
Good.
Obviously,
you guys do it. You're doing a great job for your clients if that's the case. So that's
analyze and make sure when we get a new listing or someone buys a house, make sure that all this is taken care of. But every example we've had to call Chris's group, call the county assessor. Everyone always says they were so helpful. So that's the key here, is that they're not here to, screw you or whatever else. Right. Some people kind of go way out in left field. They're here to help you and make sure your taxes are right, and make sure that we all have to pay some tax for the benefits we get.
Yeah.
So
our values are right, not our taxes. No.
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
just kidding. Yeah, but they do. They do.
He does not do taxes. Jeez.
I just had to run that in because because it can honestly. I get it all the time. I get people that call me or send me emails and, hey, why do my taxes go up 20%? And you don't work here, and so you don't know it like we know it, and so totally understand that. It's my job going forward. In fact, I plan to do that, is to put out some different outreach programs in place. Thank you for having me to do this, because this is exactly what we need to do, just so people are informed what that is. That a 20% increase in your taxable value does not mean a 20% increase in taxes.
Okay.
It really comes down to the tax caps, and we're not a market system. So.
Okay, we've talked about a lot of these questions, so I'm gonna quit. I told everyone I'd get to them. Matt D here. Do property taxes in Washoe County reset once the property transfers owners? The answer to that is
we covered that, right? So no, it does not. But
you reassess.
We reassess once a year, starting July 1st. So.
But does that happen? So one of the things on the real estate transaction, or one of the contract, says that the county may reassess your taxes upon sale. But you're saying
interesting.
Yeah, I say that. But I think that's the cover. So if you guys. Because what happens is someone buys in May and then all of a sudden their tax rate, so it's probably to cover our.
Well, and to the point of to the taxes on the side of that, right? If all of a sudden you are buying a property, you turn that into a rental, you're going to a high cap. Right. So in that case, you would have a different set of taxes tied to that, right?
Here we go, Mike C. Do you have any idea why the building improvement valuation might have increased 20%? We've already talked about that because it's based on replacement costs that's calculated in the previous year. We've seen huge inflation, correct? And that's why we're seeing that the building improvements.
Yep.
Just because of inflation.
That's on the building improvements.
Man, we knocked all these out.
And
people are going to be loving this one.
Our market that we're looking at too on the land was pre
January.
Yeah.
Or not sales based in the last 6 months starting.
Yeah.
Not now. Mm-hmm. So that's another point. I don't know if land's gone down necessarily. Land in Washoe County is very scarce. Doesn't the evaluation, this is Zach S. Doesn't the evaluation fluctuate based on land and construction costs? And we've already said yes. Mm-hmm. So, but keep in mind that it's sales from 6 months ago and inflation. So you add those up, higher, 20% higher. This is another good question, but we've covered all these. This is verifying. We did a really good job here. Is the evaluation based on a specific time or an average over a period of time?
Yeah, so it's not based on an average, right, over a period of time, but let me read that again. Is the valuation based on a specific, so the valuation, we tapped into that a little bit, right? We are starting our reappraisal process July 1. We try to,
looking back.
We try to, and that is looking back at sales and construction costs, from previous time. Then we establish the values, which we send to you in December. Then we can reopen our roll for any new use changes or any new improvements to the property. And so it is as of June 30th, 2023, what exists as of that day.
But you have to look back.
Yep,
You can't just
so-
look back or what's because the price has gone down, obviously. But you're looking back probably during the hot period.
Yeah,
So
and that's what that's an issue for every appraiser that's out there, right? If you go to put a value, you have an appraisal done to your home, they're not, as
They're not
tied into the
looking
current market as they may be. They still have to have sales that are from.
then one other question is I think it was from Mimi. She said, is the county looking into lowering the assessed value? And it sounds like you have no control over that. It's based on whatever the market value of land is
Yeah.
at June 30th. So if land does come down by June 30th, then 24, 25.
Well, they'll reflect in that.
And
They'll
then
reflect in
if
that next value.
inflation kind of comes down and the cost is going to go down, then we'll see that
In the
probably a year.
Yeah, year and a half. Yeah.
And but people don't realize is that what we're calculating now is for 23, 24 because of.
Yep. So that's what these values are based on.
Yeah. So
as far as I guess to kind of maybe get into that other question, that last question you asked is because Nevada's property tax system is unique in the 50 states.
is there anybody else that does this?
No, I mean we are unique in the world of assessment here in Nevada, and it has its
It's
pros
fascinating.
and it has its
Yeah.
cons, and so every year legislation or every
They're
2
always
years
trying to
rather,
change
they're looking at ways to improve, modify, that sort of thing. So I do sit on the legislative committee for the Nevada Assessors Association. I'm aware of several bills that have the term property valuation or taxes tied to them. I don't know what they look like yet at this time. So anyways,
There's always trying
Time
to
will tell.
modify. And then the other thing is, I was sitting up there at the desk waiting for Chris this morning and understanding Nevada property tax system. So I'm going to take a few copies. Call me. I can send you this. It's really interesting. But the beautiful thing is that we just spent 30 minutes and basically covered all this.
that's great. Yeah.
So, but if you want a hard copy and understand it, obviously you can always call Chris's group. You can call us.
Come in, say hi. We'll provide one to you. We're always happy to talk with you. So
Yeah. So thanks for coming in.
yeah, thank you very much for your time.
Merry
Yeah, thank
Christmas.
you. Merry Christmas to you as well. Yep.
Congratulations. I know he's been working on this for a while. I know he ran the previous time and came up a little short, but this is his time. So it's a big thing for Chris and his family to.
Yeah. Well, thank you for all your. If you voted for me, thank you for all your.
Yeah.
votes. If you didn't vote for
I
me,
did.
It doesn't mean that I don't like you.
'Cause I think-
I'm still going to represent you.
I think that he does a great job, and the best thing about Chris is he's fair. So you're gonna get a fair shake regardless of when you come in and what's going on with the taxes. So. All right, till next time, like our videos. Hopefully we can get you back in maybe next year. Maybe we want to get the tax form out. I know that's the tax form, but we can talk about any other questions that come up. Or maybe we can do like a Zoom call if someone comes in. Comment below. Chris would like to see how he can improve this place. And that's ultimately
Always
the goal.
looking for ways and means to improve, become more efficient, provide the taxpayer with the service that they want. And we've talked about a couple of those things just right here, right? So
Yeah.
always looking for ways to improve. So
Great. Until next podcast, you guys take care and we'll talk soon.
thank you.